You
People were
ready?
just tired of it. Yep.
All right. Welcome to another Sunday Superversive live stream. I am your host, Ben Wheeler, and today we are talking about creativity and all that good stuff, but also sort of when to go too far. And the reason why both me and Anthony want to talk about it is for one good reason. One reason that you must understand is that Joe Jolien's uh, Wonder of You arc has gone on for a year, and we're tired of it. Somebody,
Jojo, na na
we
na
suckered
na
you in for a JoJo
golden,
episode.
na 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 na. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I have a game called Melody's Revenge. That's you find them. It's like a rhythm game where you gotta hit buttons to the beat. And
Uh
the
huh.
The Cart 5 JoJo theme, Giorno's theme is
Yes.
really good in that game.
Ooh.
Works very well. Makes for a really fun level. Going JoJo, get really into the rhythm of it. Da na na na
Joe. Joe.
golden wind. Da na 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 dun 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 dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Exactly. Now
Yep.
JoJolian though. JoJolian is a whole different animal
It is. It
than
is a
Golden Wind.
completely different animal.
So here's the thing about the larger JoJo fandom. The fan favorite parts seem to be by consensus on average, not like, there's a fairly wide range in the JoJo fandom, and I think that all of the parts are appreciated to some degree or another by the fans. But if you were to ask me what are the three most popular JoJo parts, I would say, random order, parts 4, part 5, and part 7. So
Yes.
part 7 is legitimately, I think, probably Iraqi's masterpiece. Uh, it's I That's peak JoJo. I don't know if it's the best Iraqi's ever been, but it was as good at he was at or near the top of his game for the majority of part 7. Now, parts 4 and 5 are more interesting because I would not count either of them among my favorites. I prefer part 2 to parts 4 and 5, and I prefer part 6 to parts 4 and 5. That's not to say I don't like part 4 or part 5. I but they're not among my favorites. Not personally anyway. They're well done though.
Mm-hmm.
Especially part 5 I sort of appreciate even though it's not a personal favorite of mine. I could see the things about it that everybody loves,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and part 4 as well to a lesser degree. Uh Now, part 8 is a different animal entirely, and I would say that part 8 is probably the most divisive of the JoJo parts. I know that there are some hardcore fans that absolutely love JoJolian. I know Ocean is the YouTuber Ocean is did has written some defenses of JoJolian before, argued in favor of JoJolian. So I stand with Ben with some JoJo heresy here in that if you were to ask me to pick a least favorite part of JoJo so far, keeping in mind that I like all of them, including this one, and I keep up with it regularly and will continue to do so after this week, JoJolian is probably my least favorite,
Yes.
which is not necessarily the same thing as being the worst written or worst drawn. The artwork shows a clear improvement from, I don't know, I guess parts 1 through 5. Or parts 1 through 6, I mean. Part 7, Steel Ball Run, looks absolutely amazing. So I don't think that part 8 looks better than Steel Ball Run. And there are certain things in part 6 too, I think. Certain moments in part 6 that look really, really good. Uh, but Joe Julian, even though it looks great, I think that there's something kind of off about the writing.
And I
What do you think, Ben?
I absolutely agree with you. The big thing for me is that I wonder if there's anyone who's really telling the guy no. Uh, I know that sounds weird, but it's like I believe that we're experiencing feature creep, so that instead of the smooth shonen esque parts, they're basically like, yeah, bro, do what you want, which you should never do to a creative because it just hurts them. And it ruins their ability to keep things in under time and under budget. Like, people like to talk about Jodorowsky's Dune, um, but the thing of the matter is that it would have been an immense boondoggle. It would have cost immense amounts of money, uncountable millions, to do it as he wanted to do it. And even though everything looked absolutely amazing, it still would have been, not quite a waste of time and money, but it wouldn't have been profitable. At this point, we have been in the
Mm-hmm.
same JoJo arc for a year, give or take. And even though there have been some highs and lows, like Holly coming up here and saving JoJo at the last second, um, all these different things that have been going on with the Doctor, which were actually, genuinely interesting. Um, they kind of fall apart just because we're tired. I think that if it had been a more shonen experience, where like I reread Part Three's climax recently. I've got the giant old hardcovers that they're putting out at different places, which are
Oh, really?
absolutely amazing. Yes, I that's like it's like the one book
I know
I'm
what you're
buying.
referring to because I see them.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
they're so good. They're so good. That's hardcover. They feel great in the hand. And I recently read, the part 3 climax, and it is a masterclass in pacing. The highs and lows of the villain is perfect. You think he'd be overpowered because he's able to stop time, but he's also limited by these different things here and there, and it's just, you know, it's more than what you would think it is, and in the good way. And, I compare it to this arc, which, we don't even know who the main villain of this story is yet. We think it's the Doctor.
Or if there is one.
Right. And which, it coming from its shonen flair, like it really bothersome. Megabuster Shepard said earlier that, there's a tonal shift between 3 and 4. And yeah, he wants to do something different, and that's okay. It's more personal, it's got less of a dynasty feeling to it. It's less epic, but it's got this great feel to it. It's a beautiful Dwang, you know? Which is a
It's a
meme over.
beautiful Dwayne.
Yes. Which is a bad translation. I think, like, the guy was, like, some sort of, like, Indonesian or something like that, and that's how
Oh
he.
no, the story is ridiculous. So apparently that comes from the only English translation we had of part 4 for years. I don't think decades, but I think years. Was a Chinese student who was translating it into English for a school project. And that was the only translation we had for part 4. So you get these killer translations like, oh, what a beautiful Dwang.
Yep. Amazing.
But yeah, here's the thing about part 8. Part 8 absolutely, and the Wonder of You arc, by the way, which is this most recent arc, even though technically this chapter officially starts a new arc, but no, it doesn't. Uh, I'm not even gonna dignify that by pretending this is a new arc. It's
Right.
not.
It's like, listen, the
So
fans are tired. We
the
need a new arc. Okay, so he just renames it something.
and then continues, which admittedly is kind of ballsy. I
It
sort
is.
of enjoy that, but anyway. So here's the thing: even this arc has had some killer moments, some really, really great moments. I really liked when Mamazuku starts telling him, like, Josuke, it's the spin or whatever, and he goes through that whole thing because it looked as if it was like a Steel Ball Run callback, and it's really nice that in a story that takes place so many years later, uh, with Johnny long dead, that Steel Ball Run is still having a huge influence on the story, which it has been all along, but it's nice to see still.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also just nice to see a reference to the spin because it seemed like it was gonna go the way of Hamon and just kind of be dropped, you know. But no, they're bring it. Mamazuku's bring it up again, and there are some hints because of this. Like now there are theories that maybe Mamazuku is a descendant of the Zeppeli, which I still think is a possibility. By the way, though I don't know if we'll ever have that confirmed one way or another. But and that was all great. They have the amazing moment where Gappy gives his little speech to Holly, where he goes, I don't know who I am, and I don't remember my previous life, but there's one thing that I know: you are my mother, and I swear I will protect you. Like whatever, I'm butchering the speech, but that whole moment was absolutely fantastic,
Oh,
super
absolutely.
hype, really well done, really moving. Uh, the they had the amazing chapter, which is one of my favorite chapters in the whole thing, where Yasuho, and I said like only JoJo can do a scene like this. Yasuho is stuck in the toilet because she's in the phone with Paisley Park, and they had that absolutely chilling scene where forget her name, but the mother, in the Higashita family,
Yep.
walks over and and Yasuo's like begging her to help her, and then Jobin walks over and says, close the lid. You need to trust me." And he ends the chapter with her closing the lid of the toilet and leaving Yasuho to drown. Honestly, that's probably one of my favorite chapters in all of JoJolion. I love that chapter. Uh, really hype ending.
Right.
So all of this stuff, like, it has so many great moments, multiple, and the fight itself has it's been clever. It's just that it's been going on for so long, like so long. They have been stretching out the single fight, and this guy's not even the final villain.
Yep. It's
And
it's
like
it's
we're
a
not even on the final arc yet. Like I could legitimately see this going for another 50 chapters. And that would be insane.
yep. But
But
like
it
it's
would, you know what? It kind of would make sense. Like in terms of how much needs to be resolved, I could definitely see that happening.
yeah, absolutely. And like it's a thing I've been careful about, called fatigue, arc fatigue. Like even though Pinkerton's ghosts can have like low key infinite episodes, I know that there's a plot that needs to be advancing. Everyone, when we do the season one finale, we will know exactly everyone who's following along will know exactly what's going on and why the Pinkertons disappeared and all that good stuff. I'm going to make sure everyone knows. It's going to be fairly obvious. Um, and I don't want there to be any ambiguity between, what the reader's going to feel and what we know. Because I want there to be a darn good sense of accomplishment. I want people to be like, yeah, that was satisfying. It's the mysteries. And now what's going to happen? And then I want to start off the second season strong with a clear arc that will be followed, that will be taking steps, to follow, um, with the various characters. Because, I want the reader to be satisfied. I don't want them to be like, oh, I'm so tired about the search for Jack Smallmark. I just want it to be done. I never want that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Or for,
I agree.
like it's, and it could, but it shouldn't. And if I kind of get the hint that these things aren't, satisfying the reader and our all important audience, that means I need to change bellwethers instantly. Well, Ben, what about these great arcs or ideas you have and these monsters and these, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. My ego doesn't matter. My customers are not satisfied. I need to change how these things are going. And if I've got to set up something different for the season finale, I got to set up something different for the season finale.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, the ending for Jack Smallmark is going to be absolutely epic. Even though I used it as an example of like it doing bad, in reality, I've got some really crazy stuff prepared for that.
Yeah, Megabuster Shepherd says, "Don't be like Case Closed and have a story arc that has never resolved." That's
Oh,
future.
absolutely.
That's what's it called?
Future Boy Conan,
Detective Boy
Detective
Conan.
Conan. Yeah,
Yeah, Future Boy Conan is a completely different show.
it's
Uh,
isn't it like the Bakuman thing actually?
what?
Future Boy Conan. Isn't that one of the
No,
Bakuman
Future
things?
Boy Conan is a Miyazaki show actually.
Oh yeah.
Believe it or not, it's Miyazaki's only show where he was like the head director.
Oh
And
well.
by the way, it's free on YouTube and pretty good. Just for the record, if you're ever looking for something to watch, it's like a proto Castle in the Sky.
Amazing. I thought that was
But
Caligostro.
anyway,
Anyway, yeah.
well, Cagliostro is as well. He uses the two main characters. I think that Cagliostro, in many ways, he takes a lot of the ideas that he uses in Cagliostro and he simplifies things and pares it down to their essentials for Castle in the Sky. And Castle in the Sky too is set in like Miyazaki's world, so thematically it all kind of coheres better as well than
Right.
Cagliostro. But the in Future Boy Conan, you could see the prototypes very specifically of Katsu and Cheetah in the two main characters of Future Boy Conan, and their relationship is very much modeled off of that relationship. It's a fun show. I recommend it.
I dig it. So, going back to sort of JoJo and stuff like that,
Yep.
we're not talking about something crazy or whatever, or that, everything's going on. We're just saying people are tired. And, this fatigue can actually destroy a lot of momentum a show's uh, trying to build up.
So Araki has an advantage here. And the advantage that Araki has is that he is Araki. And what I mean by this is the man is in his 60s. He is in part 8 of JoJo. Uh, he is publishing monthly now anyway, though he's taking a hiatus, which is an annoying time for it, I think. But,
He always
I
does
can't
it in
really fault
April.
the guy. Yeah, I can't fault the guy. So, anyway. So, he is in part 8. He is doing a monthly manga. Anybody who is going to read JoJo is going to continue to read JoJo.
Yes.
Whatever happens, honestly. And, like, I am not going to drop part 8.
Hmm.
However, if it was not JoJo and it was not Araki and this was just a random manga I was reading, this chapter would probably be enough for me to just say whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I might not read it anymore. Like, not that it was so bad that it made me drop it, but that I'm just so tired of this arc that I wouldn't follow it anymore. So, if you are in your 60s, have a long career ahead of you, and are an and are obvious and are a well-known genius, the rules are a little bit different for you than from people like you or me.
Yep.
You know, you could get away with a lot more, whether that's fair or unfair or whatever. However, Araki would not have been able to get away with this in the notoriously meritocratic Shonen Jump, which is why he is not in Shonen Jump.
Yep.
So, you mentioned this to me before, and I think you're absolutely correct. Shonen Jump, the editors keep a very tight leash on on the manga in Shonen Jump. And the thing about Araki is if you read his masterpiece book, Manga in Theory and Practice, which really is an absolute must read and an excellent book,
Mm-hmm.
uh, for one thing, you learn pretty quickly that Araki was considered a terrible artist early on, and that it was actually his writing that was like winning him awards and things, which is pretty funny.
Yep.
But whatever.
Because people
Anyway,
say the opposite on some of the stuff.
yeah,
It's like,
they do nowadays. I mean, he has some of the greatest character designs ever. Yeah,
oh
well,
yeah,
Jotaro Kujo is one of the most iconic character designs of all time, and quite rightly so. But whatever. So the point I'm making, the book Manga in Theory and Practice, Araki mentions in there that so much of what he did in JoJo, so much of it was driven based off of like pure business considerations. And honestly, there are few better books for disabusing you of the artistic notions of the industry, if that makes
mm-hmm.
sense. So, like, the thing that I keep bringing this up because it kind of blows my mind
Yeah,
that like the
Chris.
core conceit of JoJo, the thing that makes JoJo is most famous for, it switches protagonists with each part, right? And does a completely new story with completely new main characters in every part. This part of JoJo was something that Araki did because entirely for business reasons. Because Jonathan wasn't that popular. That was why he did it. He was
Yep.
worried he would get canceled if he kept using Jonathan. Like, it wasn't artistic. It wasn't. He didn't say something like, I was running out of stories to tell,
Right.
or something like that. Or he didn't go, I wanted to try something bold and new. No, it was the opposite of that. It was, I was going to be canceled and I needed to change something drastic.
Yep.
So I completely switched stories and I switched protagonists, and that's how that started.
And the thing is that
Now,
it was an absolutely amazing decision to do. Rather than say, "Oh, Jonathan just gets worse and worse and worse," it's Jonathan had this amazing death scene that is absolutely one of the best written things that are in manga, and not everyone can say that. Not everyone is capable of that, and it was entirely a commercial decision. When
hmm
I make decisions with Pinkerton's Ghosts, I do put, probably a little too much more artistic sentiment in it than, someone like Araki would. But also, I make sure that is this a decision that is entertaining? Is, Sean going through a boardwalk, a Jersey boardwalk, and being pursued by an evil magician entertaining? Yes, it is entertaining in its core concept. Or Jim, going to, um, the underground city of Seattle, where he fights somebody who's afflicted by dragon sickness. Inherently entertaining. And that's the primary thing I consider. Above all, is it entertaining? Yes. Good. Good.
so the reason I bring this up is to point out how much of Araki's decision making in the early parts of JoJo was driven by what would sell and what people would want to read. And if you contrast that with part 8, I think there is a clear difference here. This shit in part 8, this extremely long arc, he would never have been allowed to let it run this long. And I don't mean in like an obnoxious way where, he would have been fighting with his editor. Araki doesn't seem like he's the sort of dude who did that anyway. I mean, he seems like a pretty chill guy, going by his book anyway, and I haven't heard anything bad about him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this whole thing, like, I don't think that they would have that he would have been running an arc for this long in Shonen Jump.
Yep.
I think they would have told him, dude, you know, we got to move on to something new. We got to try something. And you see this, like, when I mentioned that he made that change in part one, but you see changes like this all the way up through the last part that was fully published into Shonen Jump, which is part six. So the first appearance of Anasui, who's one of the, for people who don't know, that's one of the Joe Bros of part six.
B
And the
tier.
first appearance of Anasui in part six is clearly Anasui is a woman. Like, he doesn't speak, he doesn't say anything, we just see him in the background, but it's obviously a woman. There is no mistaking it. Clearly, he drew her as a woman. But the editors of Shonen Jump told Araki, "You have too many female characters. The audience of Shonen Jump is male. You could have these female characters, but we need a guy in there, right?" So
Yep.
Araki just kind of said, "Okay," and he changed it, and that was it. Like, he didn't really make it. I don't recall there ever being like a controversy over it or anything, because I don't think that Shonen Jump did it because they said, oh, you know, it wasn't a social justice issue in any way, either pro or con. Like, it wasn't, there are too many women and we're a male magazine. No, it was, what do the readers like? The readers won't want to read this many female characters. They'll want to have a guy in there to identify with. Make
Yep.
him male. And Araki, realizing the wisdom of what was being told to him, because they were correct, by the way, just said, "Sure, I'll do it." That's something you probably would not get with Joe Jolian. Now, I am guessing here, of course. I have no idea what the editors are telling or not telling Araki, but the fact is that Joe Jolian does have a reputation among JoJo fans, and to be fair, when I see people talk about this, it's mostly in a positive way, as Joe Jolian is the weirdest JoJo part. It is the most of all of them. And I would agree. Like,
Yep.
I think that is a fair comment. Uh, JoJo is very strange. And in some ways, it is bizarre.
It is bizarre.
This
So,
is a good thing.
yep.
What was it?
Well, it's like that's why I kind
So,
of
in
want.
some ways,
This.
yeah, I'll finish this thought, then I'll let you go.
Yep.
So, in some ways, this is a good thing. You get the more original stuff, and you get uh, some some of his more unique and crazy ideas. It's cool to see, and it's nice too to see, like, here's what Araki would do without as much supervision. But the flip side of this is that if there's nobody around to tell you no, you start to lose sight of what your audience is looking for, I think.
Yep.
And I think that's what's going on here right now.
Because like one of the things that we expect
Go ahead.
from absolutely. So one of the things we expect from JoJo is an epic showdown. Good and evil, all these different ideas that he's been paying off up until now, so on and so forth. And that's not something we have here. We have an arc that is released monthly. Now, don't get me wrong, a 10 chapter arc leading up to the final villain in a weekly Shonen Jump would have been no problem whatsoever. In fact, it might even be awesome. We get all the things that we've gotten, or even like a 12-week one. I'll say that there's like, a 3 to 4 month range where he could have had this epic arc. And no one would have complained because it was weekly. There would always be advancement every week, but there isn't. Instead, it's all very slow going. I know that Bradford Walker mentioned oh no, where is it? Big O, and that is, I haven't heard of Big O in quite some time. It's fantastic. Um, and that's I don't even remember the plot of Big O. I just know it was pretty darn epic, and there was something about cloning, and maybe the main guy was a clone or something, and there's this crazy guy who's trying to tear everything down, except no one remembers anything anyway. So what do they care about him tearing it down, and why is he so keen on tearing it down? There's a whole lot of questions going up. Um, that just kind of just never went anywhere. With case closed, Detective Conan, he'll never solve who de-aged him, Megabuster Shepard says. Um, he'll never get back with his fiance. And, guess what? People love it. I got people who love Detective Conan. But again, I get frustrated just because I'm looking at it and I'm like, how long has this been? Um, yeah, no, I only have 4 concurrent viewers right about now. Uh, the there was a spike earlier. The fact of the matter is that if you create an artistic piece and don't have an end in sight, it's going to negatively affect um, how things are going to go. People won't know where you're going if you don't know where you're going. It's like I tell people online. That was a very valuable piece of equipment I just flung into space. Uh, if your audience, if you don't
Just like
know,
we tell people online.
right, if the audience does, if you don't know what your thing looks like, the audience isn't gonna know what the thing looks like, because they're pulling it from you, your ideas, your personality, and so on and so forth. Not being able to have a firm grasp of the image of it, you know, hurts your piece of work. Now, do I think that uh, JoJo is the same way? No, not necessarily. What the? But it's still very frustrating. It's still very frustrating that we have to wait 2 months for another chapter for something that you know really should have been uh, solved months ago, it feels like, or should have been broken up differently so we have a bit of a break, so that there feels like there's some resolution and not just this no resolution thing that's been going on. And it's just frustrating. Like, I know that with stuff like the Magnus archives, they had a pretty decent setup for their first season finale, where one of the characters who was interviewed and or had an interview about her shows up and sieges the uh, uh, institute and nearly kills a bunch of people. But the thing is that like rather than having something set up where like we see her being killed or something like that, she just kind of disappears and someone else deals with her because like they had CO2 containers and she's weak to CO2. Okay, fine. Hitting things with CO2 is a perfectly reasonable way to kill anyone or any giant mass of sentient bugs powered by a low-key demon. But it just felt like I wanted to see it. So it doesn't matter how exciting it was with the.
So
It just didn't feel good. Yeah.
so here's the problem with this most recent arc of Part 8, that X Forts in his, I don't know if you watch any of the
I
JoJo
do.
reviews or not, any of the JoJo podcasts or whatever.
I love X
So
Force.
you know X Forts?
I do.
Yeah. He his review of it was pretty good, and he kind of gave the main problem, though. I'm gonna be honest. He was going on about how much he hated the rock insects, and I literally forgot that rock insects were a thing until Araki brought them up again this chapter. So I can't say I agree with him. Like I didn't care either. I didn't and don't care either way about Rock and Sex specifically, but I don't know. Anyway, I watched X-Fort's review of it on YouTube, and he kind of gave the real problem here, which is this chapter essentially ended exactly the way as the last chapter ended, with like exactly the same situation, which is Joe, which is Gappy lining up a shot and then fade to black. So in the last chapter, it was Gappy lining up a shot that was about to hit the head doctor. This time, though, the twist is that now there's a shot that's about to hit the head doctor and a shot that's about to hit Toru, fade to black. So, but essentially, it's the same thing. You're waiting for the impact. We didn't actually progress at all. We didn't learn anything this chapter. So, what did we learn this chapter that was important, necessary information that has changed the way we view the story? Arguably, you could say that a soap bubble came out of Gappy's birthmark, but come on, like you couldn't have established that, you know, in any without having to waste a full chapter on it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we have made no progress in a full week. And what's weird is that the chapter itself, and also, like, I hate to say it because it is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and you could argue that it never really makes sense, but it always makes sense. I'm not buying what the hell is going on with Gappy's soap bubble. So,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm getting here is that Gappy's soap bubble is a combination of Josefumi Kuja, or whatever his name was, Josefumi something, Josefumi's stand, which was soap bubbles that could steal things from other people, and Kira's explosion ability. And according to Mamazuku, this means the fact that he's combined these two abilities gives him the explosive spin technique, which has the power to break through chance and destiny or something. So, my question is, uh, why? How does combining explosions plus soap bubbles equal, and now you can defeat destiny? And
Because, Anthony.
what was Paisley Park doing? So Paisley Park. So Josuke tells Paisley Park, since Yasuho is about to get crushed by a falling plane door that has been falling for like 3 or 4 chapters now,
Yeah,
by the way, in an absurd, which is also absurd,
it
but
feels like it.
yeah, and I don't think I'm wrong either. Like it's 3 or 4 chapters that plane door has been falling. So, and it's going to hit Yasuho. So, apparently, Paisley Park grabbed the soap bubble, traveled through the phone, brought the soap bubble with her, and then shot it out at Toru, possibly faster than the speed of light. Because it needs to make it to Toru before that plane door hits Yasuho, and the plane door is currently like 6 inches away
Yes.
or something. So, what the fuck is going on? Like, what? How? What? It could do this? I. Okay. Sure. Basically, I'm just at the point where it's like, I just read this chapter and I don't really understand what's going on here anymore. So I thought that the spin that he was talking about, I didn't think it had anything to do with combining Josefune and Kira's thing. I thought it was just that Bamazuku realized something about how Josuke's stand worked, and he knew about the infinite spin from Part 7,
Mm-hmm.
and he was saying if you utilize the infinite spin with this ability, it will allow you to. But no, apparently it has to do with the fact that he combined his ability with explosion. But why? Why does that how does that make sense? I don't get it. I don't understand. stand.
Anthony's in pain. So I'm gonna compare like the build up for part 7, which is legitimately amazing. You should do it. It's very friendly to American readers. Steel Ball Run,
Yes, read part 7. So
and it
Mega Buster Shepherd, read part 7.
and it's
Read
also
part 6 too, for that matter. But honestly, part 6 has more impact if you've read
all of
part
it.
4. I think part 5 you could kind of skip. I mean,
Yeah,
it's great, but it also has nothing to do with part 6.
it's a side story really, but
Yeah, it's great. I recommend it, but it has nothing to do with the rest of JoJo.
so uh, so the power progression for part 7 is your protagonist is stuck in a wheelchair. Then he kind of gets a stand and can ride a horse. And then it's, his stand gets more powerful. So we have something that like spanned a solid decade. I don't know, probably a decade. Um, it felt like it, many years. And he he goes from literal cripple in a wheelchair to, um, being able to use the infinite spin to send the president of the United States into a recurring time loop that's in one spot and one spot only, which is the bottom of a pit in somewhere in New Jersey. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. Everything I said is gospel truth of what happened. Uh, there's a lot that
Hmm.
was invested in it, and then there was a lot that paid off. We know that Johnny Joestar is getting more powerful. He's getting more powerful every time he fights. He has a dark determination, and he's going to do what it takes. So it feels really good every time he takes a step and, defeats one of the president's bodyguards. Or, when Gyro um, he defeats Ringo Road again by literally standing 6 inches away from him and going, you know I've got the determination. I'm no longer half-assing this. All this good stuff. Like, it feels so good, but it doesn't feel the same here. Besides the fact that Soft and Wet has an OP ability in Pillage and Bubble Pillage, it just doesn't feel good when it starts growing in power, which it should have been doing a long time ago. He's never really demonstrated any new power, any new abilities. Like, I'm gonna turn Jack Morrow into a sharpshooter. Sure, he's still got his shotguns in his 1911. And he's still gonna start fires, and he's gonna start more fires soon. Don't you worry. But like, how do I progress a guy, forward? Well, he's chased by the goddess Artemis, who is using him for sport because heaven allowed her to fire 3 arrows at Jack Morrow. So he's watching her and he's like, oh, she balances her weight out this way. And then he uses his newfound skill, which he just got by looking at her, to shoot an elf in the face. Because that's very satisfying to shoot elves in the face, especially smarmy, arrogant elves who are hunting you down like a dog. There's a clear mini progression. Uh, I'm carefully monitoring, Jim because Ken isn't, a trained author like we are. He's very good for what he is. But, I'm carefully monitoring it. I want a clear progression for Jim. I want him to take chances, make mistakes, and handle the powers that he's given. It's all in my calculations because I need to make sure that this is incredibly satisfying for the authors, for the readers, for everything that I need to satisfy. Giggity.
Yeah, Mega Buster Shepherd says I won't forgive turning base Frenchman into a turtle, but Mega Buster Shepherd, that's like legit one of my favorite things about Part 5. And also, Polnareff is actually survives all the way to the end of the series somehow, in which still like blows my mind that Polnareff canonically is just a turtle, and he doesn't even care. He's cool with it. He's
Right?
like the turtle advisor to the mafia, and I just have this image of Giorno, like when people ask Giorno for favors, he like turns to his turtle and like talks to him, and everybody thinks that Giorno is insane because he like asks his turtle for advice.
But the turtle gives fantastic advice, though. It's always the right decision. Actually, like, literally, if you said, "Hey, Polnareff, what do you think about?" Oh no, this stuff, he would be like, "C'est la vie." He would literally say, "C'est la vie." Like
He would too.
it's a very French way to view it. Like they're
It's
passionate.
just hysterical though.
It is. It
Like he's
is.
literally his advisor and is a turtle, and that's like his life now. And he decides to stay on Earth as a turtle because I guess he just thought, I don't even know what. Honestly, I don't even know what Polnareff is thinking.
It
Uh,
works though.
I don't really get his mindset, but it's pretty funny.
Again,
It is pretty funny.
the brass balls on this guy though. Just fantastic stuff. Another thing I want to sort of pick up on is, our favorite punching bags, George R. R. Martin and Patrick Rothfuss. Like, let's be real.
You say that, but I've never read a single thing by either of them, and I never will because I don't care.
I've read the OG Game of Thrones.
No, yeah, I was about to say no. That's not true. Maybe I'll read the OG Game of Thrones one day.
I've read the first
Uh,
novel, just the first novel, and I'm like, I
yeah,
know
that's
exactly what this is
that's all
about.
I mean. Maybe I'll read that book one day because I heard it is legitimately a great book.
Yep.
Uh, but I have no interest in anything else Martin's written, so
And
may-
mm,
I might try OG Game of Thrones though.
so the reason why I'm bringing him and Patrick Rothfuss up is that they've sort of expanded beyond what they originally meant to do. Like outside of Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin was respected as a horror and sci-fi author who had a few different things running around that were culturally relevant. And all power to him. I've seen Night Flyers. I've done this and I've done that with some of their work, and that's fine. Rothfuss less though, but that's just because he's kind of like, I don't know. He doesn't even do shows. It doesn't feel like. You just kind of there. You're looking at what he's doing because you're an author. You want to keep relevant with this stuff, and he's doing nothing. Uh, and it's just very frustrating because it's like everyone, like not everyone. I shouldn't say that. Excuse me. But many times people point to In the Name of the Wind and go like, well, yeah, it's good fantasy. It's like Earthsea, and it's always been very disappointing. I haven't even read his stuff, but just on the bad reputation from people we like, and the weird reputation of people who are not professional authors, and the fact that he hasn't really finished a series that should have been finishable, very finishable. Um, it just gives such a bad taste to my mouth, and I don't want it. I don't want to read it. I don't want to see if I'm wrong about any of it. Just because it's like I'll be disappointed if it's good, and if it's not good, that's kind of what I knew what was going to happen.
Hmm.
It's a complex thought, but it's like it's basically time wasted versus enjoyment gotten. I could read a short novel by John Mollison that I've got next to my bed, or I could spend several weeks reading a doorstopper that will never be finished. And those are just the two most famous versions. There are all kinds of people out there who just write novels and then never finish them. And then it's like, but they're so good. Okay, let's see them finish something. It's a pet peeve.
Hmm. So Araki finishes what he starts. I will give
Yep.
him that, and I have no doubt that JoJolian is heading towards an ending. Uh,
It might even be a good ending.
yes. I mean, so far, every single ending to every JoJo part, I think I could safely say has been fire.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
the quote unquote worst of them is probably part 5, and even that ending is pretty good.
Yep.
Like and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I don't think that it goes above and beyond like the endings of, part part 3, part 6, you know.
Hmm.
It's perfect, but it works perfectly well for what it does. Uh
There's
so I
also a clear.
honestly,
I just
what was that? Go ahead.
while you're here, I just wanted to say that there's also a clear ending. There's no ambiguity to it. You know,
Correct.
and it feels good. It feels so good when Dio gets beaten up for the third or fourth time. It doesn't matter. It's
So
dinosaur Dio. Yeah, boy, I'm
part
into it.
3, yeah, right. So part 3 is an interesting case in that I honestly think that the ending of part 3 is so good it like retroactively raises the entire part.
Yep.
Like I realized later that part 3 is elevated by the Egypt section. Basically, from the Darby the Gambler fight to the finish, it's just like S tier fight after S tier fight to the end.
Yep.
Absolutely fantastic stuff. Uh, and the Dio fight again, like that's why when people tell you like don't skip part 1, I understand why people don't like part 1 as much. I really do, but it adds so much to part 3 to know who Dio is. It adds like so much weight to that final confrontation
Right.
because you barely see Dio in part 3, but if you watch part 1, you know this is Dio. It's Dio. And this isn't just, we're not just saving Jotaro's mother. We're not just stopping a vampire. This is the climax of a generational struggle. Starting with brother against brother, growing into this epic final confrontation. It's also too why, as many people have pointed out, with Steel Ball Run, like Steel Ball Run, even though it technically takes place in a rebooted universe, it really is designed for longtime fans of the series, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that somebody start JoJo with Steel Ball Run because, for example, when Dio shows up at the end of Steel Ball Run, Alt Universe Diego, and uses the world for the first time,
Oh,
like, that's a hype moment. But it's a hype moment if you're a fan of JoJo, because you're just like, holy shit, Dio just used the world, and you haven't seen that since all the way back in part 3, like decades ago. And now Dio is using the world again. It's such a moment. Now you're just like, what's going to happen? What's but if you're not a fan of JoJo's and you see that, it's just like, oh, it's another stand. You know,
yeah.
you don't really know what it is. You don't really know what's going on. And don't get me wrong, the fight itself is good in its own right, but it
Right.
doesn't have that weight to it.
Feels so
So,
good.
in terms of what's going on at the end of part 8, here's the problem that I foresee that Araki has. Part 8, by design, I believe, doesn't really have a clear villain. And what I'm sensing from the fan base is that people are starting to get kind of frustrated with this. Now, part of it is not really fair. It's because JoJo's has always had great villains in every part. I mean, I honestly think the villain of every single part of JoJo has been terrific. Uh, with the arguable exception of Cars, and Cars is great. He's just not as great.
Right.
Yeah. Uh, and I actually think Cars is, if anything, is kind of underrated. I think he doesn't get enough credit. I think Cars is really good.
I
But
do have an image of the other villains of the anime making fun of cars, and I will put that up for people.
that's true. The ultimate life form, Cars? No, but
But he has such
so
an awesome theme, though. It's Aztec
he does.
dubstep.
Yes,
Aztec dubstep.
he does.
Ah!
He has such a great theme. So the part 2 anime is legitimately like it's one of those things where I think it's an improvement on the manga in literally every way. Uh, like the anime of part 2.
Wait, Rothfuss? So, you're absolutely right, by the way. Uh, So hold on. I'm just going to go back over the comments real quick. George R. R. Martin at least can crank out some side stories. Absolutely. Bradford Walker says Rothfuss live streams on Twitch. Uh, what? Like, does he write on Twitch, or does he just play video games instead of writing? Uh, Bradford Walker says Gamma BS on the Name of the Wind. Kavoth is a Gary Stew, and I hate it. Yep. Literary obesity has to be purged. And then Bradford Walker comes in with a zinger. Jojolian will finish. Araki will finish. Berserk will not. And that hurts.
Sad. Yeah.
It's true, though.
Like a Buster Shepherd, I still miss Stroheim. Yes.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, the only Nazi who everybody likes.
You're lucky we're too unimportant for the AIs to pay attention to us, Anthony.
It's true. Yeah. That's my favorite thing about Stroheim, though. It's that, make no mistake, the man is a Nazi. And, like, you know, at one point in the story, he just straight up murders a bunch of innocent people just because, you know, he is a Nazi. But you know what? He's awesome. And you like him. Because Stroheim is the best. He has that fight with Cars in the middle of part 2, where Cars grabs his hand and then says, "Give up, your German science. You truly believe your science can defeat me?" Or he goes, "Your German science can never defeat me." And Stroheim says something like, "You think so, do you?" And, like, twists his arm all the way around with, like, a rocket on his hand or something. It's amazing.
Then he starts pinching pieces of Cars away. Pinching. And it's like, okay, I'm impressed. And it feels so good. So
Then
good.
later, like, he has, I'm trying to remember what it was exactly, but it was something like, you know, he's on the ground and Cars is, like, standing above him, and he's telling Stroheim, he's like, so your German technology has failed you after all. And Stroheim just goes like, "Do not underestimate the Germans," and, like, shoots a laser out of a button or something.
Out of his eye.
Like, that was it, yeah. And just, it goes like, "Do not underestimate German technology." Just, like, shoots a laser out of his eye at him. It's just amazing.
Right?
That was the most disappointing part of Steel Ball Run. Alt Stroheim only shows up for, like, one chapter, then dies.
Yep. Avdol,
It was
too,
a
actually.
shame. Yeah, Avdol doesn't die. Avdol shows up, and he's gonna, like, Alt Avdol is gonna, like, ride the race on a camel. And then,
Yep.
like, I think the camel just... And they set it up like he's gonna be some major player in the race, and then the camel just, like, breaks its leg or something early on.
He gets into a fight with somebody, and they just kind of get rid of him.
Yeah.
Like, it's so unimportant we can't even remember it.
Mm-hmm. See, here's the thing about Steel Ball Run. The fans of Steel Ball Run will tell you that Steel Ball Run didn't really get great until later, and it took them a long time to actually introduce fans into Steel Ball Run, which is true. It did take a relatively long time. And it's worth noting that the first 24 odd chapters or so of Steel Ball Run were run in Shonen Jump.
A bit more than that.
And something along those lines. Yeah, the early sections of Steel Ball Run were run in Shonen Jump. But the thing is, like, I remember when I read it, when they start the actual race, and the first section of Steel Ball Run, like, the first part of it, it's just a race. You know, no supernatural kind of nothing, like, it was just a race. And by the time they finished the first leg of the race, I was already, like, in on Steel Ball Run. Like, just the race on its own, without the fighting or the larger plot, I would have followed Steel Ball Run if that's all it was. Like, it was really good. I think people don't give it enough credit, to be honest.
Oh my goodness.
Like, I think that that first section of Steel Ball Run, the horse race section, is really entertaining. So, Jojolian, yeah, Jojolian's just such a weird part, and I honestly think that the problem with Jojolian is that Araki needed an editor to tell him like when to move, when to switch arcs, to
Mm-hmm.
say, you've been on this section for too long, you got to do something else, or to
Yep.
say you need to do this, you need to do that. He needed somebody to be an extra pair of eyes, not necessarily like to tell him what to do, but just to tell him, readers are going to want this, right?
Yep.
Like you got to do something because readers are going to get tired. And there are great sections of Jojolian. Don't get me wrong. The stag beetle fight in Jojolian is truly the the uh the stag beetle fight is truly like the Jojo. I think the iconic moment of Jojolian so far is the stag beetle fight.
I can see that. It, there's all this good stuff to it. Like,
I would argue that.
yeah, like, and it's I'm not against it. I think the soft and wet arc, the first one, is also pretty good. There's all this good stuff there. But again, it's like with creative endeavors, what's the end goal? What's it going to look like? And is it going to get there fast enough? Um, with and of course there's also like release dates and stuff like that. Uh, you know, Bradford, I love you. I love you dearly. I love you like a brother. No homo. But I'm waiting. I'm waiting here with like on the rocks, waving a handkerchief, waiting for something something. I don't know. I was gonna do a whole bit where like I'm like standing in a dress waiting for Sailor Daddy to come home, but it's not happening. You know, and I don't mean this as like anything more than a bit of friendliness, but it's like, oh, I want the next episode of Star Knight. I want that. I want that. I want that next novel. I want the next Xseed novel. I want this and I want that. Galaxy's Edge has finally started releasing their stuff again, and it's like, yeah, buddy, feels good. And the reason why it feels good is because I'm getting my little monkey brain ticked. Getting that dopamine shot. Um, with all this stuff, and it doesn't feel like I'm getting my dopamine with JoJo. And I want my dopamine, Anthony. I need it. Do you get me?
So the thing about, you mentioned this before, the thing about Steel Ball Run, and the reason I talk so much about Steel Ball Run is that Steel Ball Run, after those first 20 or odd chapters, I said I actually liked it even up to that point, even though I seemed to be not in the minority. People liked it, but I don't think that people liked it as much as I did. But that sort of idea, just the horse race, is like, I think is really fun. But when he left Shonen Jump, there was, first off, he got a month in between chapters now, so there was an uptick in the art quality. Naturally, I mean, you would expect there to be. And the
Yep.
artwork in Steel Ball Run is, I think, even to this day, peak JoJo. Uh, the artwork in Steel Ball Run is, there are some truly stunning, like some of his scenery and landscape shots in Steel Ball Run are just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely like out of this world. You know, another level. But the thing about Steel Ball Run is that he had less oversight after he left. He was clearly allowed to do more. He was allowed to be a little crazier, and he was allowed to go darker than he had in Shonen Jump. It definitely got more sexual, which he really leans into Jojolian, but it was there in Steel Ball Run as well. And I think that was what was most especially something that he would not have been allowed to do. Like some of the stuff he did with Lucy and Hot Pants in Steel Ball Run, I think he straight up would have not been allowed to do in Shonen Jump.
You got away with
But
calling
the
somebody hot pants. It's amazing. This man is a
yeah, right.
master.
But I don't think that. I think that the structure that had been started in Shonen Jump was still there, and I don't think that that structure was there at all in JoJolion.
It was there enough
Like,
in Steel Ball Run to keep things from getting really bad, but like in JoJolion, it's gone. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying it different.
yeah, I. So you're right. So the problem with JoJolion, I think, is that don't get me wrong, the plot of JoJolion has been progressing. And we've gotten a steady drip of information and we know a lot more now than we did at the beginning. It's just that like I feel like Araki hasn't had any there's been no urgency to any of it, and I think that that's really a problem in a series like this. Like there is a reason that writing 101, any author book, any author you talk to, anybody you speak with will tell you what is the easiest, most surefire way to add suspense to a story. You could probably finish my sentence. You add a time clock, right?
Yeah.
So, Steel Ball Run. What was the time clock? Well, that's easy, isn't it? Steel Ball Run is literally a race. They are racing for each corpse part. Every other person on the trail is also racing for this part. Now, we didn't know exactly what the corpse parts of Steel Ball Run did for the majority of it, but we didn't need to because it was a race. There were other people who wanted to accomplish this goal. It was very clear what was going on, who needed to win what, right?
Yep.
So so that sort of thing in Steel Ball Run really drove the plot and really drove the story, and it gave it momentum, and it made sure that you were always clear on what the stakes were. Now, in JoJolion, you've pointed this out. The problem with what's going on with the curse and all of that is what are the stakes if Gappy loses? I mean, let's say Gappy decided at some point in the story to stop seeking the head doctor, right? Let's say at one point, in one of the many chances that he had to turn back, he turns back before Yasuho goes to the house. He decides to stop pursuing the head doctor. Well, the answer is that nothing really happens. The status quo remains. Gappy can live his life. He can pursue a relationship with Yasuho if he wants to. He could probably live a pretty fulfilling life. And other characters could drive this plot. Jobin has his own motivations. He could move the story forward. So let's say that he decides, you know what, it's too much of a risk. I don't want to pursue the head doctor. Instead, I want to kick Joshu's ass and end up with Yasuho. Right?
Perfectly
I just want to,
legitimate.
yeah, I just want to get into a relationship with Yasuho and live my life. And honestly, Holly Joestar, she seems like a nice woman, but clearly, if I pursue this any further, I'm going to die, and I don't remember anything about her. Well, then the story just kind of ends and life goes on, right? Like, now you could sort of say the same thing about Steel Ball Run, but Steel Ball Run, at least, it's like, what happens if he leaves? Well, if he leaves, Johnny doesn't learn to walk again, and then Valentine may get the corpse, and then if Valentine gets the corpse, we don't know what will happen, but we know that Valentine's a bad, bad dude.
I mean, it's
And
100 years of prosperity for America. Good fortune. America takes the napkin first.
so that's the whole idea with Valentine, but I think the idea is that it's 100 years of good fortune, but he's propelling all of the bad luck that America would have gotten to random parts of the globe
Yep.
and just causing them all to collapse with bad luck,
Yep.
which is why he's evil. And also that Valentine is a bad enough dude that he would give the corpse part to Dio just to make sure it stayed out of the hands of like Johnny and them.
Yep. Yep.
And also Valentine is literally a rapist, which I think too few people pay attention to. He was literally going to rape a 14-year-old girl.
I mean, wasn't
in
she disguised as
a
his wife?
he figured it out though.
Oh, right.
He figured in that scene.
I don't
So
remember
that was,
that too
by the
well.
way, that's one of my favorite scenes in Steel Ball Run when Lucy infiltrates the mansion in disguise as in disguise, using Hot Pants' ability. Which, by the way, Hot Pants has an ability called Cream. Fantastic. What an ability. Anyway, so when Lucy infiltrates Valentine's mansion in disguise is one of my favorite chapters of Steel Ball Run. And I think Lucy became a fan favorite probably because of that chapter. And at the end of the chapter, Valentine figures out who she is, and then he just decides he's gonna rape her. But then he realizes that she's actually like pregnant with the corpse parts in a really really weird Virgin Mary parallel thing. So he's just like, you know what, I'm gonna leave her alone. But he was totally going to do it.
Right. If not for the
Poor Lucy, but
if not for the intercession of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Uh,
kind of. It reminds me of that scene in the last season of Rick and Morty when so they needed to come up with like a Deus Ex Machina. They need to come up with an ending of the story that was for some reason not dramatically satisfying in order to escape. So Rick decides that they'll be born again Christians who will be saved at the last second by Jesus. And more they do have. I know that we're not supposed to compliment Rick and Morty on this show because we're good Christian men, but I did laugh at this joke where after they do this, Morty goes, "I don't know, Rick, like taking shots at the Bible, isn't that kind of easy? You know, isn't that a little cheap?" And Rick goes, "Morty, Jesus Christ literally just came down and saved the day. How can people possibly be unhappy with that?" And I laughed at that joke. I don't know.
it's a pretty good joke. It is still
You know,
insulting, but
like, isn't that kind of easy? You know, making fun of the Bible. Isn't that like a cheap shot? And he goes, "Morty, Jesus Christ literally just came down and saved the day. How could people possibly be unhappy with that?" And I laughed at that.
yep.
So yeah, and Megamus Maximus, who I don't recognize. Hello, Megamus. If you've been here before, sorry I don't remember you. If you haven't, welcome to the show. Anyway, he says, Shep, in a twist of irony, it's Stroheim, the Aryan Ubermensch of Hitler's Third Reich that saves Smokey Brown, without any hint of shock, condescension, or oddness, straight face. That is correct. Well,
Yep.
that's because Stroheim, even though he is a mass murderer, believes in the ultimate superiority of the, even though he believes in the ultimate superiority of the Aryan race and the German Ubermensch generally, and how he will totally kill people who he considers inferior without a second thought. Uh, he also like it weirdly doesn't seem to be based on like you know I'm trying to think of how to put it like just because you're black doesn't necessarily mean that you're not worthy of Ubermensch Stroheim. You know, like he has that awesome scene where he has all of the Jews that he's holding in a cell, and he goes into them and goes, "All right, listen up. So
They were
I'm gonna
Spaniards,
take
by the
one of
way.
you."
Hispanics.
What?
They were Hispanics.
They were his. Oh, they were.
Yeah.
Okay, but he goes into the room and goes, "Listen up. I'm gonna kill one of you, and I'm gonna let the rest of you go. So pick which one of you is gonna die." And the one guy steps forward and says, "All right, if you're gonna save everybody else, then take me." And Stroheim stares at him and goes, You know what? I like you. You're willing to sacrifice yourself to save your friends. All right, here's what I'll do. You live. Everybody else, they die." And then the guy's like, wait, that wasn't the deal. He's like, "You're heroic. You're a good person. Everybody else is a piece of is slime. They deserve to die." He's like, "But you know, you have a heroic spirit or something along those. You know,
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing. I don't think they use these exact words, but that was the gist of it.
Yeah.
Was like, you know, you have a heroic spirit, so You deserve to live. You go, all of these people, though, they die. And don't get me wrong, like, Stroheim's in the wrong in this scene. I don't think we're supposed to believe he is in the right. I mean, he's kidnapped these innocent people, and then he lied to the dude and killed them all. So, I don't think you're supposed to come out of that going, Stroheim, what a hero. But you are supposed to come out of it and say, Stroheim is a man who has a code of honor,
Yep.
which, in a sense, makes him admirable.
He's not just some.
Which he does.
He's not a cardboard cutout.
Right. He is not a cardboard cutout. And Joseph says he doesn't like Stroheim. But with that said, Stroheim is somebody who you can rely on.
Yep.
Which he totally is. He saves Joseph at the end as well.
And he didn't have to. It's
No, he didn't.
It's pretty great. I love that kind of stuff.
He dies in the battle of he dies apparently at the Battle of Stalingrad, and as many people pointed out, I like to believe that he like held off the entire Red Army single-handedly and saved his whole unit while yelling about how German science was the greatest in the world.
Right. Tears in his eyes.
No, not tears in his eyes, laughing hysterically.
Right.
Just going like, fine, you think you could take me? As his whole army retreats behind him, he just stands there and holds his ground, takes on like the entire Red Army on his own. Just go ahead, give it your best shot. You could just see that scene in your mind's eye, can't you?
I can. It's fantastic.
Just laughing hysterically as he mows down people with a gun that pops out of his arm.
Right. It's
shooting
good stuff.
Off rockets and lasers.
It's good stuff.
Oh man, I loved part 2. And the part 2 anime truly was one of those things. It was such an improvement on the manga. Which is good, don't get me wrong. I don't think, however, I do not think the art in the part 2 manga is good. Especially, I think the character designs in the part 2 manga were really bad. Just gonna be honest. Smokey, especially. I thought Smokey looked absolutely hideous in the. Sorry. I thought Smokey looked absolutely hideous in the manga, though. Just terrible.
Yep. So we got Megamus Maximus. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, we got that. Rick Farewell says, who I also don't recognize. We got new people. Welcome. It's weird here though. Stroheim sounds a bit like the character with No Country for Old Men, who had his code of honor. Absolutely, code of honor and an ill-advised page boy haircut.
Stroheim very, very easily could have been the villain. By the way, a great villain in another story. And he would have made, like, he could have been a terrific villain, but he easily could have been the villain in another story, but not in the story that Araki was telling.
No, he's just a side character.
He is, yeah. He's a side character, but he's one of the most memorable side characters in all of JoJo. That's the reason I think Part 2 is remembered so fondly, too. So, as much as I enjoy Part 3, I always say that the ending of Part 3 elevates the entire part in retrospect. And the thing about Part 3 is that, honestly, the Stardust Crusaders are just not that memorable in Part 3. Especially after the side characters in Part 2, especially Stroheim and Caesar, are two of the most memorable characters in all of JoJo.
Yeah.
But, like, Avdol, Kakyoin, especially Kakyoin, like, I can't even really tell you Kakyoin's personality.
He liked the mommies.
He liked what?
He liked the mommies. He would have he respected mothers.
He's kind of a cougar chaser, wasn't he?
Yes. Well, the thing is though that that's like the only time he actually shows some real personality. Like the building blocks are there. He has an artistic temperament. He can do this and that. And then like Araki just is like, it's a shonen manga. Who cares? And he's right. But also we wanted more. And Kakyoin died brilliantly. For a character as undeveloped as Kakyoin, he was certainly given a magnificent death scene, which is to Araki's credit.
Yeah, he gets. I mean, they all get great death scenes in part three. I've seen some people criticize how Avdol and Iggy died,
No.
but I thought that the Vanilla Ice fight was fantastic.
Yep.
Megamoose Maximus says Kakyoin x Jotaro Yaoi was all the rage in the 90s.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's dumb. Uh, that's stupid. If you're gonna do JoJo Yaoi, you would do Josuke and Okuyasu, if anything. I mean, not that you would, but if you were going to.
That's very Bara, Anthony. That's too manly.
What's the Seinfeld joke where they would go, "We're not gay," and then George would add, "Not that there's anything wrong with that." They had the great episode of Seinfeld where everybody was convinced that George and Jerry were gay and in a relationship with each other, and whenever they would deny it, they would add at the end, "Not that there's anything wrong with that."
Right.
It's the
And
same thing. It's like, if you were gonna do a gay JoJo relationship, Jotaro Kakyoin's stupid. Now Josuke Okuyasu, that one works,
oh
but
my
they weren't
goodness.
gay. Not that there's anything wrong with
I
that.
hate every part of this conversation. And we're just gaining subscribers. What will the AI overlords think?
The fun part is, I do think there's something wrong with that. Because we're based.
Yep.
Anyway, Megabuster Shepard says Iggy got cut in half. Yep, F's in the chat for Iggy, guys.
F.
Not Kakyoin, Iggy. F's in the chat for Iggy.
Kakyoin got like a whole scene for his death, and it was fantastic. Like Iggy was just a dog, and he sacrificed himself.
Iggy was weird because Iggy really didn't like as a character, mostly because Araki I think used way too many used too much bathroom humor in part three, and he would do that with Iggy a lot. But then Iggy got that absolutely amazing fight with the crow, with
Yep.
Pet Shop.
For no reason.
Yeah, for no reason. And all of a sudden, Iggy became like one of my favorite, one of the best characters in part three. Just randomly, he decides, I'm gonna have an episode or a chapter, I guess, And thanks for the F's in the chat for Iggy, guys. Anyway, I'm gonna have a chapter where I'm gonna have the dog fight a crow, and he has this chapter, and the chapter, like the fight, is legit probably like one of the three best fights in all of part three. The Iggy versus Pet Shop battle.
Yep. Yep.
And for all sorts of reasons, it's creative. Like it goes through so many different locations. It has character development. This whole arc in the middle of it.
It's just absolutely vicious in all the right ways that you want two animals fighting to be. That sounded worse than it was.
It's an absolutely vicious fight. One of the most vicious fights in the whole show, actually.
Yep.
Like, legit, it was probably the second most brutal fight in the show.
Yeah.
Well, no, the Vanilla Ice fight was pretty bad too, but those were all endgame fights though. So
yeah. Like it was time to really put out the stops, and he did. And it was amazing, and even though.
And then like 2 episodes later, they kill off Iggy, and all of a sudden, this character who I didn't even like, and I probably would have celebrated if he died, he like completely flips around and turns it into this super tragic death. It's ridiculous.
Araki.
The moral of the story is JoJolion certainly could end very well. The That's the other problem though. So we touched on this before, but I think this is a good time to bring it up now that we're talking about the finales. Also, by the way, we've tiptoed around part 6, but we're gonna get there because we have to discuss it.
We
I
will.
think.
Really, I'm just getting this out of
Well,
your system so we can have some time without talking about JoJo. But, you know. I'm a good screen whatever something whatever my thing is. I'm a good
good
showrunner like
co-host.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait till I
I
bring
don't
up
know. I wouldn't
what's
have brought
next
up.
week. Oh,
I want to talk about anime rom-coms since.
you see,
Uh,
but I didn't want to talk about that because I have one opinion about anime rom-coms. Anime rom-coms
Toradora's great.
anime rom-coms are only good for the first 3 chapters.
No, Toradora's awesome.
Anime rom-coms are well like okay, the manga version. So Toradora ended, so it's got like a leg up on like 90% of all rom coms. Uh, but
True.
I will say, without a shadow of doubt or irony or anything like that, that most uh, romance manga are only good for the first 3 chapters. So my favorite one that I ever enjoyed was not Oron Host Club. Oron Host Club was pretty good. It was pretty funny. And honestly, it's more about the gags than the romance. It
Well,
was,
yeah, Oran Horse Club is just a gag show, really. It's just
yeah,
a comedy.
just with a little bit of extra flavor to it. Flavor.
Hmm.
Was faster
I've
than a
never seen
kiss.
it,
What?
but so no, and I don't want to see it either. So here's the thing: I say talk about anime rom-coms, but it would really just be an excuse to gush about Toradora,
You're gross.
which I legit think like it's way better than it has any right to be.
Yeah, but I don't want to watch it. It just never hits right.
It's so good though.
Anthony,
It's
no.
so good.
Stop trying to indoctrinate me. Stop it. I said no.
She's the best tsundere, Ben. She's like the
Tsunderes.
only good tsundere.
Ho 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 ho. Only good tsundere. Ho 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 ho. We've got one,
As I think
boys.
it over, I'm thinking it over. Let me see. There's Makise Karasu in Steins Gate, I guess. She's okay.
But
She's really popular. She is pretty good.
all the girls in Steins
Uh,
Gate are weirdly popular, and I don't like it because it takes away from the main girl, who is like the only
who?
actual romantic partner. What's her name?
Karasu? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the tsundere. That's who I'm talking about. Uh, there's Makise Karasu. There's when I know Digibro back when he was sane. By the
I
way,
still need to
more
download a
F's
bunch of
in
his
the chat.
videos.
Yeah, more F's in the chat for Digibro, by the way, who has completely lost his mind.
He's
Uh,
deleting all his reviews and stuff like that. It's
I'm,
it's
I mean, I'm happy to archive it because I think that there's genuine quality stuff there, but he's completely lost his mind. It's legitimately sad, and not even really sad. It's just sad.
yeah,
Like this is a man with a serious mental illness who is
and
letting it ruin his life.
no one will tell him differently. He's like, oh well, the fans just
Hmm.
prefer my old stuff. It's like, yes, but also like you're calling yourself Beatrice now, and you're destroying your legacy, which was like the greatest of all time anime content reviewer and theoreticist, and it's frustrating.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
But what I was saying, he mentions Winry from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is actually like a proto as tsundere, and I guess she's fine. She's a good character. Uh, Makise Karasu, good character, I guess. But Taiga is the best tsundere.
So here's something. Here's a controversial statement we can fight over. Jolene is tsundere to Anasui.
Let me think it over. I guess.
Now,
Why not?
why
So,
not?
Bradford Walker said, did you suffer total loss, the Brain Eater? Yes.
Yep.
And Megabuster Shepherd says, nobody wants Roni reviews back. Trust me, I wouldn't know. I don't watch them and never will. Uh, I don't care about the My Little Pony show. I've had people tell me who I actually trust that it was, in fact, for a time, quite good, but I just don't care about it.
It was pretty good. I followed it closely
Yeah.
up until like the 4th season. I'm not even joking.
It has nothing to do with, I just, the show doesn't interest me. But his anime reviews, so here's the thing about Digibro. Me and Ben have been on the record here as Digibro has legitimately made, like, insights and advanced the discussion in terms of anime. One of the cruelest things that's been done is when Jeff stole his credit for basically advancing the discussion on SAO. So all modern discussion on SAO, the discussion on SAO that starts with SAO is really bad and everybody knows, right? That was all Digibro. Digibro was the person who brought the discussion to that stage. And Jeff literally took the credit for it and, like, refuses to credit Digibro for it. And I know this actually, like, once upon a time, this really pissed him off. Because,
Yep.
like, Jeff started billing himself as, like, oh yeah, I'm the guy who hates SAO. And I'm like, motherfucker, that was not you. Like, not only that, none of Jeff's SAO videos, none of them are anywhere near as good as Digi's either. Which is the other, like, that's the other sad thing about this.
Yep. Like, it's just a bunch of sorrow and sorrow on sorrow.
Mm-hmm. That's honestly, like, I always talk about. So, what do you think the worst thing Jeff did was? Was it that time he promised to do a Naruto review and instead reviewed the Naruto mobile game?
Which he was
it
paid
that time
to do.
That, yeah, yeah. Was it that time that he told everybody not to read JoJo? Was it that time that he told people to read JoJo out of order? But honestly, all of those things are just slightly amusing shill type stuff. What he did in terms of stealing Digibro's credit for SAO for himself is actually really shitty and immoral.
Yeah.
Like, I remember him saying it in the video. Like, he said like, Jeff said something in the video where he goes, as I became known as the guy who hates SAO. And I'm like, motherfucker, that's such a lie. Like, that's a straight up lie. Digibro was the person who started that discussion. And Digibro has a legacy in that sense. He literally changed the conversation. Like, around how people talked about SAO. Basically single-handedly.
Right.
And Jeff started taking credit for it. And the sad thing is, all of Jeff's videos are such basic bitch videos. Like, they're not even that good. Digibro's videos on SAO are actually fantastic.
Groundbreaking.
Yeah, like, legitimately. I listen to them for the quality of the analysis.
Yep.
And I don't even watch SAO, but, like, I can admire the videos just for how in-depth and how good they are at what they do.
Yep.
Bradford Walker says Digi was one of the few people who understood Legend of the Galactic Heroes. That's interesting you say that, because I've never seen him review it. With that said, I could see how that, knowing from what I know of Digi, I could see how that could be the case. Friendly reminder that Reinhard von Lohengram did.
He didn't do anything wrong. You're absolutely right.
Anyway, moving on.
It's like the monkey brain. It's like people who did nothing wrong. Stroheim, Reinhard.
Okay, but Stroheim actually did, and
yeah, he did.
All Lohengram did wrong was the I forget the name of the incident early in the series where he, like, lets the Imperial Army attack, and then he uses it as propaganda. like, look, they massacred this planet, and I could have, but it turns out he could have stopped it, but he didn't. But even that whole situation was like really in a gray area, and what was it? Kirchheist was there the whole time trying to guilt him out of it, and he remembers that, and Lowengram remembers that later and makes sure never to do anything like that again for the rest of the series. Reinhard von Lowengram did nothing wrong. I stand Lowengram. I love me some Yang Wen Lee, but I would be on Lowengram's side. Bradford Walker says, Sieg mein Kaiser, Sieg Kaiser Reinhard. Exactly.
Hmm.
Let's get back to JoJo and pacing, though, because this is the real point that we got distracted by talking about Digibro.
Yes.
Uh, what I was trying to get at is, right now in Part 8, arguably the biggest problem is that there is no main villain in JoJolion. Now, this in itself is not automatically a problem, right? Like,
Yep.
you don't necessarily need a main villain in your story for it to be good. I'm reading Spy Family, and Spy Family, even though there is technically like an antagonist, he's barely a presence in the story, and it works perfectly well because of the type of story that it is. The thing is, though, JoJolion is a story that is so all over the place, it desperately needs that sort of structure.
Yep.
And I honestly think that it is a mistake for Rocky not to give the story a main villain.
Yep.
Like, I think right now the prevailing theory by fans is that Jobin is going to end up being like the final boss of JoJolion. But I'm actually thinking that's less likely now because it looked as if he was going to kill one of the main characters, but then it turns out that character actually survived. The fact that that character survived gives him an out, where you could sort of say, like, oh, he's not totally evil.
Yep.
And I suspect what's going to happen is that, like, Gappy is going to show up and he's going to kind of, like, say, hey, I'm actually part of the Higashita family. Jobin, I really want to help you. I'm not your enemy, right? Like that sort of thing.
Right.
And Jobin, and they're going to sort of have he's going to de-escalate the situation, kind of.
Yep.
Is what I suspect is going to go down. I don't know who the final villain of the story is going to be. It is a battle manga. I think there's going to be a final battle, but like right now, the prevailing theory is that's going to be the mother. Only the mother would be a very unsatisfying final boss. Because Kato, right?
Yep.
That's the name?
I mean,
Kato?
and that's the
She just
theory I
isn't in it
prescribe
that
to.
much. Yeah. And it could happen, but she just hasn't been in it that much. She's a very unsatisfying final boss.
Yep.
When you compare him with, the weakest of the previous JoJo villains, Cars, just does not have the impact.
Right. Cars is there from, the first time he can logically be introduced. He's there. The whole thing with what's the name of that one? The one that was by itself, which I cannot remember for the life of me for no reason.
Diamond is Unbreakable?
No, the one that was in Mexico, the guard dog,
Oh.
Santana. So like Santana,
Yeah.
shows up, but he's not actually like a main villain or anything like that. He's portrayed as a watchdog, and the second that we meet like Wamu and stuff like that, we instantly know the difference. Like there's thematic themes in there that thematic themes. What am I doing? I'm Ouroboros eating itself.
These themes are very thematic.
Don't bully me. So with it, he shows up and he's got clear thematic differences between Cars and Whammo and ACDC. And Cars is always, from the beginning, portrayed as being the main villain. Even when Whammo shows up, he goes, "Awaken my masters," and he wakes up his masters, who are portrayed it, and there's subtle things in there that Cars is that, and even when like they have this little fight among themselves, because Whammo automatically attacks anyone who stands in his shadow, it's like it's there's deference given to cars, but the three treat each other as being respectable. Like, it's a whole complex thing that's actually pretty amazing and more subtle than it's given credit for. Um, but there's no like confusion about it. Nobody's confused. It's Cars is from the beginning set up as the main villain, and there's no one beyond them. Even if he tried to do something with Stroheim, it wouldn't have worked. Nobody would have cared. No one would have thought of anything about it. Oh well.
So, going to the end of part 6, we're talking about the pacing of part 8 being too slow, and part 6 is a good counterpoint here, I think. Now, you and I are well known, I think, by the longtime readers being admirers of the ending of 6.
Yes.
However, part six's ending has been criticized by many people, and the biggest criticism I have seen is that it was rushed. It came too quickly. It wasn't built up enough. I
Rushed.
don't agree with this for a variety of reasons.
I
So,
agree with you.
the reason I don't agree with this, one of the problems I have with some people with the I don't know, the discourse, I guess, around part 6 is people say that part 6 doesn't have structure, but they're wrong. Part 6 does have a structure. The structure of part 6 can be described as escalating insanity. It's about how
Virtual
everything that happens.
insanity.
hmm It starts off small and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until by the end of it, the entire world is being infected in ways that you can't just snap your fingers and then everything will be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Like what happens in part 3. You kill Dio and then the world goes on, or in part 5, you kill Diavolo or you stop Diavolo, whatever you do, right? And the
Right.
world goes on. By the end of part 6, that's no longer an option. The world has been, and it's been building up to this though, because it started off small with it just affecting the people in White Snake's and Pucci's immediate vicinity until it grows and grows and grows until the entire world is being fast forwarded, through like this escalating cycle of day and night, and you get fictional characters are coming to life and attacking the world. So by the time we reach the ending of part 6, I think it has been built up to that point. Now, Pucci ends up meeting his end at the hands of Emporio, which sort of seems like an out of nowhere choice, but I think that it fits the story thematically because Pucci's defeat at the hands of Emporio is meant to be a dramatic irony. Pucci hyper focuses on the Joestars. Emporio is the only character who doesn't really have any sort of offensive stand.
Yep.
His stand is all about running and hiding. So Emporio is the fact that the character with the most powerful stand and who is the most powerful character we have seen at any point in the entire series, even now, I think, although the head doctor is maybe up there, his stand is ludicrous. But
Yes.
whatever.
Don't
Up
think
to
about
that
it.
point, anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, don't think about it. So, up to that point, Pucci being by far the most powerful stand we have seen, to lose to the hands of Emporio, who was a 12-year-old child with the only stand that with a stand that's not even really offensive.
With his brother's own stand, uh, which is just like more irony on it. Weather report.
That he needed to hit. Right. Yeah. All he had to do was hit that point. But he decides he doesn't want to leave the loose end, and he figures that Emporio is going to be easy to beat. So he causes things just to take care of it. And he underestimates Emporio. And of course, the stand that ultimately defeats him is the stand of his brother, Weather Report,
Mm-hmm.
like you said. Basically, what I'm saying is all of this is set up in various ways. It's set up by the structure of the story, that structure of escalating insanity leading to this point. It's set up in the character of Kyuchi. It makes sense that he would do this. It makes sense that he would underestimate Emporio. It is set up narratively, the dramatic irony of Emporio being the person to defeat Kyuchi, the irony of the stand of his brother being the stand that ultimately defeats Kyuchi. And it all works together to create an ending that I think hits the perfect note of bittersweetness, where you feel as if a lot has been sacrificed, but the sacrifice has been worth it.
Yep.
In JoJolian, I think that the problem we have is that structure, like, it's kind of too late to get things working on so many levels. You know what I mean? Like, even if you added that at the end of the story, the ending of part 6 works on so many different levels. I don't really think that JoJolian has the time to set that sort of thing up. And if it does, holy crap, how much longer is JoJolian going to run? 200 chapters? You know,
Please
200
no.
chapters 200 chapters isn't actually that long, but it is when you have a month-long release schedule, like a once-a-month release schedule.
It hurts.
So, like, sure, you could have Jobin as the main villain if you want to. You could have Kato as the main villain. Uh, if Araki somehow doesn't kill Toru this next chapter, which you could have Toru as the main villain. But I don't think that the narrative has done the work setting them up and setting up the ending the way that the narrative of part 6 did. I don't think the structure is there. Part 6 had a lot of structure. It had narrative structure, it worked with the plot, it worked with the themes of the story, it worked with the characters as we knew them. But does part 8 really have the ability to be firing on that many cylinders? I know that it's a fundamentally different type of story. Unlike Part 6, which was pretty much a straightforward shonen battle manga, Part 8 is almost like a mystery slash battle manga. But at the same time, like, I don't think that there's any character in Part 6 that you are as invested in seeing defeated as you are Pucci in part 8, that you're as invested as seeing defeated as Pucci in part 6.
Yep.
I don't think that the setup is there for the ending of the narrative for it to work on as many thematic levels. I bring up part 6 because part 6 had an issue where people thought the pacing was rushed when I don't think it was, but you could also say part 5 as well. Part 5, I think, is arguably the weakest ending of all of the parts of JoJo, up to now at least. But Part 5's ending works on many different levels.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, the strongest way I think that Part 5's ending works is thematically, where the ultimate conclusion to the story arc of Diavolo and Giorno, it ties perfectly into the themes of the series that we've seen up to then. And I get why, even though Part 5 isn't one of my favorites, I get why people love Part 5 so much. I understand the appeal of 5. Now, I understand the appeal of Part 8, too, to an extent. But, with that said, I honestly think, with a little bit of heresy here, and I know that I'm kind of being unfair because I'm reading people's minds with this, but I think that people are sort of making excuses with fate at this point.
Yeah. I can't
people
argue against it.
really people really don't want to be disappointed in part 8. Nobody wants to say, okay, so this part's kind of falling apart. But honestly, I don't think the plot really works as well. I don't think that the ending is being set up as well. And it's not bad, and I'm going to keep following it. But that's the thing. I'm going to keep following it because it's Araki, and I trust Araki. And I do. I think he'll pull it out. But while I trust Araki, I also think it's important to say that if it were anyone else, like I would probably drop the manga after this last chapter.
Yep. And
Like
it's yeah. Yeah. Can't really argue against it. I've dropped manga for less. Much less.
the last chapter, like it wasn't bad, but X Force kind of said it best. It's like and he's kind of who I have in mind when I say I feel like people are sort of making excuses for it because he really sounded like he was trying very hard not to say, man, that sucked. You know, like
Right.
he was really searching for it. You know what I mean because you heard him.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that assessment of him?
Yeah.
Sounded like he was trying very hard to avoid saying that he hated it. Uh, and I didn't hate it. It's just that I felt like I didn't get anywhere this chapter. And it's felt that way for too long. Honestly, if the arc had ended here, if we had seen the results of it, if it had just ended, probably I don't even know if we'd be having this stream
Oh,
because there wouldn't be
absolutely
as much
not.
to talk about.
It would. The only reason I want to talk about it is just because it's like it's inherently fascinating. It's like to see somebody who could legitimately be called a master make bad choices that affect um, us, our the reader. It does change things out, and we're down to one concurrent viewer. We've been going on for 2 hours.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
And I think we made it to a solid conclusion as well.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add about it. It's just fascinating to me. Um, just because it provokes thought, and it gives ideas where previously there really weren't any. Yeah. Well, next week I'll have a guest on, which I will reveal next week because he might have some scheduling problems, but I will tell Anthony privately soon. Once we're done here. But it's going to be interesting. It might be on a mission trip my pastor is taking to Congo. A bit about the history and a bit about the things he does, and it'll be to raise some charity um, to help give
That's neat.
to give Bibles to pastors because they don't do it. And then like he goes, yes. So what have you been doing in it without it? Oh, we've been preaching from dreams and visions. And everyone just like you could like even when he retold it, there was this bit where he stopped and considered it before moving on. It's like, yeah, we're getting you guys some Bibles.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, no, I hope you guys enjoy it, and I will talk to you Anthony about it privately. But I thought I'd get some hype, um,
Solid.
solid hype. Uh, but yeah, no, I need to start downloading Digibro videos before the purge, before the dark times, and turn it into DVDs and sell Best of Digibro, and then say, "What do you mean? Digibro's dead. He doesn't exist anymore." then force him,
That'll go well.
and then force him to legally prove that he's Digibro.
Boy, that's some 4D chess right there.
and it'll set him on
That's
his
some
path to healing.
some 5D chess.
Next level Christianization. All right. Have a good night, guys. Thank you for joining us as always, and be sure to join us next week.